Chapter 1. The Awakening of the Predators. The sky was dark with alien ships. Commander Lena Ray squinted through the scope of her binoculars as the Krivian fleet descended. They moved in chilling silence, hundreds of ships casting shadows over the ocean, sleek and formidable against the backdrop of Earth's atmosphere. Lena could feel a tremor in her hands, a blend of fear and excitement. She had fought all her life, but nothing had prepared her for this. A voice crackled in her earpiece. "Commander, they're in range of the first defense line." "Orders?" Lena lowered the binoculars, her jaw tight. "Hold steady," she replied, her tone a practiced calm that belied the storm brewing inside her. Around her, soldiers braced for impact, faces tense and eyes wide as they stared at the enemy on the horizon. This wasn't just a fight, it was survival. Earth's survival. In the control room behind her, scientists and engineers worked in frantic coordination. The room buzzed with terse conversations and the hum of machinery, lights flickering over consoles as they monitored the Krivian advance. At the helm was Dr. Aiden Yara, Earth's top biotechnologist, his brow furrowed as he pored over a digital map of the invasion routes. Aiden glanced up, catching Lena's gaze through the glass, his expression unreadable. Lena entered the control room, her heavy boots echoing against the metal floor. "How's it looking, Aiden?" she asked, trying to keep the tension out of her voice. Aiden didn't look up. "Bad," he said, his voice a low rumble. "These aren't scout ships. It's a full-scale invasion. They've come to take the planet." Lena clenched her fists. "They think we're weak. That Earth is just another easy target." Aiden finally looked at her, his eyes dark and determined. "Then let's show them what a mistake that is." At the back of the room, General Marcus Sato cleared his throat. Lean and stern, Sato was a veteran, a man who had seen battles but never won like this. "We're going up against a force with technology centuries ahead of ours," he said, his voice measured. "Even with your bioengineering tactics, Dr. Yara, we're outmatched." Aiden's lips curved into a slight smile, though his eyes held no mirth. "They may have better tech, General, but they've never faced Earth's ecosystem before. Our planet's biodiversity is a weapon in itself. I've modified certain microorganisms, fast-evolving, adaptable. They'll find a way to infiltrate the Krivian systems." Sato frowned. "Bioengineering as a defense? Sounds desperate." "It is," Lena replied, her voice hard. "But desperate is exactly what we are. Unless you have a better plan?" Sato's silence was answer enough. Lena turned to the main screen, where the largest of the Krivian ships loomed ominously. It was sleek and dark, almost organic, as if it pulsed with life. The sight of it sent a shiver down her spine. But she couldn't afford fear. Not now. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Then it's settled. Aiden, initiate your plan. Let's show them that Earth isn't just prey." Aiden nodded and turned to his team. A series of commands lit up on his screen, green bars flashing as the program activated. On the ground outside, the modified microorganisms were released into the atmosphere, invisible to the naked eye, but deadly to anything foreign. Within seconds, they began to spread, carried by the wind, adapting and evolving with each breath. The Krivian ships approached the first defense line, their engines humming in ominous harmony. As they crossed the threshold, Lena watched the monitors anxiously. The microorganisms were designed to adapt to the unique metallic compounds in Krivian technology, to weaken their systems from within. But no one knew if they'd be effective on such a large scale. Seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Then a spark, a burst of static flickered on the monitor. One of the Krivian ships jolted midair, its sleek frame shuddering as its systems faltered. Lena held her breath as another ship stuttered, then another. The microorganisms were working. "Look," Aiden whispered, pointing to the screen. "It's spreading." One by one, the Krivian ships started to list, their engines flickering as the bioengineered microorganisms burrowed into their systems, disrupting power flows, corroding circuits. A nervous energy rippled through the control room as the humans watched the once unassailable fleet begin to falter. But the victory was short-lived. From the back of the fleet, a new wave of ships advanced, their hulls thicker, gleaming with reinforced metal. Lena's heart sank. The Kruvians had brought in reinforcements. Sato exhaled, grim. They're learning, adapting to our tactics. This is going to get ugly. Lena straightened, forcing herself to stay calm. Then we adapt faster. What do we have left? Aiden's fingers flew across the console as he searched for answers. We could release a secondary strain of the microorganisms, something that targets their reinforced hulls, but it's untested. Then test it now, Lena ordered. We don't have the luxury of time. He hesitated, meeting her gaze. This strain is unpredictable. It could damage more than just their ships. Do it, she said, her voice a steel edge. If we don't take the risk, Earth won't stand a chance. Aiden took a deep breath and nodded, typing in the final command. The room fell into silence as they watched the new strain deploy, spreading like invisible smoke through the air. On the monitors, the Kruvian ships began to react, their engines sparking as the microorganisms gnawed at the hulls, slipping past their defenses. One by one, the ships started to break formation, scrambling to avoid the invisible swarm. The control room erupted in cheers, but Lena didn't join in. Her gaze remained on the screen, her expression grim. This was only the beginning, and she knew it. But for now, they had proven one thing. Earth was no easy prey. The chapter ends with Lena's quiet determination, a cliffhanger that leaves readers questioning what new threats the Kruvians might bring, and how Earth will continue to fight back. This sets a strong foundation for the next chapter, as the characters prepare to face the consequences of their actions and the escalating war. Chapter 2. The Cost of Defiance. The silence was brief. The control room's jubilation faded as the distant thunder of Kruvian weapons filled the air. Outside, the alien fleet was regrouping, adapting faster than Lena had expected. One of the surviving ships launched a plasma salvo, the glowing orbs arcing through the sky and slamming into Earth's defense lines with a deafening impact. The ground shuddered, knocking a technician off his feet, and several monitors flickered, showing blackened craters where ground troops had once stood. Lena turned to Aiden, her face hardening. What else can we do? We've slowed them down, but they're still coming. Aiden clenched his jaw. If we deploy the microorganisms more aggressively, they could spread through the air systems on their ships and start disrupting life support. But it's risky. This new strain isn't stable, and if we lose control, it might mutate too quickly to stop. Beside them, General Sato adjusted his tactical display, noting the incoming formation shifts of the Kruvian fleet. The risk is high, but so are the stakes. If we don't hold this line, there won't be a safe zone left for our forces to fall back to. Lena took a deep breath, glancing at the remaining defense lines on her screen. The Kruvians had halted for a moment, recalculating their assault, but she knew they wouldn't hesitate long. Do it, Aiden. Release the microorganisms, but monitor the strain carefully. I don't want this weapon turning on us. Aiden nodded, his fingers flying across his console. Deploying now. He activated the release, and a secondary wave of modified microorganisms drifted into the air, invisible and silent, seeping toward the Kruvian fleet. From the observation deck, Lena watched the scene unfold. The alien ships began to jerk and weave erratically, their once perfect formation breaking as some of the engines began to sputter. An eerie green flicker illuminated one of the ships as its power system shorted, sending it tumbling out of the sky in a spiraling descent. But then, as if in response, one of the larger, central ships released a stream of drones, small, silver, and fast, streaking down toward Earth like a rain of metal. Lena cursed under her breath. They're sending recon drones to locate our weak points. She turned to Sato. We need all anti-air defenses targeting those drones now. Sato relayed the orders swiftly, his expression impassive but his voice firm. All anti-air batteries, engage the Kruvian drones immediately. Focus fire. Do not let them reach the city. The defense cannons roared to life, filling the sky with streams of tracer fire, slicing through the swarm of drones. Each explosion sent shockwaves reverberating through the sky, but the Kruvians' resilience was chilling. For every drone destroyed, Two more seemed to take its place, pushing relentlessly toward Earth's defenses. Inside the control room, tension mounted as every eye remained fixed on the screens. Aiden's face was drawn, his fingers trembling slightly as he typed rapid adjustments into the microorganism deployment program. "The strain is adapting as planned," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "But if they adjust too fast, we won't be able to keep pace." Lena turned, catching the hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Aiden, we can't afford to lose this battle. If you need resources, time, anything, tell me." He looked at her, his expression dark. "It's not resources. It's that we're nearing the limit of what these microorganisms can do. If we push harder, we could be unleashing something that might come back to haunt us." A low rumble reverberated through the room as another explosion lit up the monitors. The Caribbean fleet was pushing through, despite the microorganisms, despite the defenses. They were relentless, a force of nature bearing down on Earth with unwavering purpose. Aiden's voice broke the silence. "Lena, I can try something extreme, a hybrid strain. It's experimental, but it might be the edge we need. It won't just disrupt their systems. It'll attack their neural network connections, possibly even their physiology." General Sato frowned, his brow furrowing as he weighed the risks. "And if it mutates beyond our control?" Aiden met his gaze with a rare intensity. "If it mutates, it could become highly infectious. There's a chance it would spread to our own troops, maybe even civilians. But it's the best shot we have right now." Lena's mind raced. Every instinct told her to pull back, to wait for a safer option. But with the Caribbeans bearing down, hesitation could mean the annihilation of everyone she swore to protect. She turned to Aiden, her voice steady. "Do it. We'll deal with the fallout later if we have to. Right now, we need to survive." With a grim nod, Aiden initiated the hybrid strain release. On the screen, the newly engineered microorganisms moved through the air like a shadow, finding their way into every breach, every crack in the Caribbean ship's defenses. The effect was almost immediate. Within moments, one of the largest enemy ships shuddered, its lights flickering erratically as the strain invaded its core systems. Lena held her breath as the Caribbean fleet began to collapse inward, their ships faltering one by one. A wave of elation washed over her as she watched several more ships spiral downward, crashing into the ocean with resounding booms. But then, a chilling sight caught her attention. The remaining Caribbean ships shifted again, reforming around a central vessel that had not been affected by the microorganisms. This ship, colossal and gleaming with reinforced alloys, seemed almost alive, as if it were watching them, learning. Lena's stomach dropped. "Aiden, what is that?" Aiden's voice was a whisper. "That must be their command ship. It's shielded from biological attacks." Just as the realization hit, the command ship unleashed a massive pulse, a surge of energy that cut through the air, disrupting the bioorganisms on Earth's side. Screens blinked out, power flickered, and Lena felt the static charge rippling through the control room. Lena gritted her teeth. "They're countering everything we throw at them. It's like they're evolving faster than we are." Aiden stared at the command ship, his face drained of color. "If that ship reaches Earth, none of this will matter. It'll be the end." Outside, the Caribbean drones were now swarming over the remaining defense lines, slipping past Earth's remaining guns and defensive measures. Lena took a deep, steadying breath, her mind racing. There was no time to hesitate. "Prepare all forces for a final stand," she commanded, voice unyielding. "If they want Earth, they'll have to fight us for every inch." The room fell silent, each person preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of their world. And as Lena stared at the approaching command ship, she knew that this was it, their last chance to show the Caribbeans that Earth was more than prey. Chapter 3. The Turning Tide. The rumble of distant explosions filled the control room as Earth's final defense line prepared for the coming onslaught. Lena felt the weight of every heartbeat pounding in her chest, each pulse a reminder of what was at stake. The command ship loomed on the screen, surrounded by the remaining Caribbean fleet, an ominous specter above Earth's battered defenses. Outside, troops scrambled, their movements hurried but determined. Each one knew they might be facing their last battle. Lena tightened her hands around the edge of the console, watching Aiden work furiously as he updated the microorganism deployment, tweaking parameters, hoping for a last-minute miracle. "Are we ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Aiden glanced up, his face etched with exhaustion and something deeper, a grim resolve. "I've done all I can to stabilize the microorganisms. If we launch now, they'll target the Kruvians' remaining systems and hopefully disrupt their command ship. But if they mutate faster than we predict—" "I know." She held his gaze, feeling the silent weight of his decision pressing down on both of them. "But we're out of time." She straightened, looking around the control room. The screens displayed the skeletal remains of Earth's cities, once vibrant, now shadowed with the smog and flame of warfare. Her crew waited for her command, their faces worn but defiant. She took a steadying breath. "This is our stand," Lena said, her voice carrying across the room. "Every system, every weapon, every last resource, deploy it. Show the Kruvians we will not be broken. We'll fight them to the last breath." A murmur of affirmation swept through the room, the last fragile seed of hope blossoming among her team. Aiden nodded, fingers racing over the controls. "Deploying the new strain now." On the screens, Lena watched as the modified microorganisms launched into the atmosphere, carried by wind and targeting systems, weaving toward the Kruvian fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Kruvian command ship flickered, its shields crackling as the organisms infiltrated its defenses. The display on the screen shifted, showing faint disturbances rippling through their hulls, their energy signatures wavering. A cheer rose from the team as one of the enemy's ships spun out of control, colliding with another in a brilliant burst of flame. The command ship, however, remained eerily untouched. "They're adapting," Aiden muttered, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted the microorganism parameters, forcing them to seek out new weaknesses. The Kruvian vessel pulsed, a shockwave emanating from its core. The wave hit Earth's defenses like a physical blow, throwing Lena and her team to the ground. Lights flickered, screens cracked, and a low, ominous hum filled the room. Lena scrambled to her feet, her head throbbing. "What was that?" she demanded, fighting to keep her balance as the room shuddered again. Sato, grim-faced, studied his console. "That was a targeted electromagnetic pulse. It's knocked out half our systems. They're not just playing defense, they're preparing a final strike." Aiden cursed under his breath, frantically attempting to revive the disrupted microorganisms. "They're smarter than we thought. They're actively countering every move we make." Lena's mind raced. They couldn't keep up with the Kruvian adaptations much longer. Earth's defenses were crumbling, and yet there was a small, unrelenting spark within her, one that refused to accept defeat. "General," she said, her tone resolute, "we need to get a team onto that ship." Sato's eyes widened. "You're suggesting a boarding mission? It would be suicide." "It's our only chance," she replied. "If we can reach the core and disrupt their command systems from the inside, we might still have a shot." Aiden looked at her, a mixture of admiration and fear flickering in his eyes. "You'd have to disable the central processor and possibly their neural link. It's complex, and we don't even know how their internal systems work." Lena gave him a thin smile. "Then it's a good thing I specialize in the unknown." Within minutes, a team was assembled. Lena suited up, securing her tactical gear with calm precision, the adrenaline sharpening her senses. Aiden and Sato would monitor her progress from the control room, relaying whatever data they could capture on the Kruvian technology. "Lena," Aiden's voice crackled over the intercom as she stepped into the shuttle bay. "Stay in constant communication. We'll be with you every step of the way." The shuttle hummed to life, the hum filling her with a strange sense of clarity. She strapped in, feeling the familiar weight of the gear pressing against her, a reassuring reminder of the battles she'd fought and won. The bay doors opened, and for a moment, all she could see was the vastness of space stretching before her, punctuated by the gleaming silhouette of the Kruvian command ship. As the shuttle drew closer, she could see the alien structure in chilling detail, sleek, metallic spines jutting out from its core, a faint, eerie glow pulsing from within, as though the ship itself were a living creature. Approaching docking hatch, she reported, her voice steady. The shuttle latched onto the Kruvian vessel with a soft thud, the airlock sealing as she prepared to board. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the hatch and readying their weapons. Inside, the Kruvian corridors were dark and silent, a labyrinth of twisted metal and pulsing energy veins that seemed almost organic. Lena led her team forward, the dim, shifting light casting ominous shadows along the walls. "We're in," she whispered, holding her weapon at the ready as they navigated the narrow passageway. Her heartbeat was steady, her senses heightened, every nerve alive with the awareness that this mission could be her last. Aiden's voice crackled in her earpiece. "You're close to the command center. Sensors show elevated energy levels ahead. It might be their core." The team reached a set of heavy doors, thick and reinforced with Kruvian alloys. Lena placed a small charge against the hinge, stepping back as it exploded in a silent flash. The doors swung open, revealing the heart of the ship. Inside, the Kruvian core pulsated with an intense energy, the very nerve center of their operations. The room was lined with alien consoles and strange machinery, flickering with symbols that Lena couldn't decipher. At the center, a massive structure throbbed, wires snaking from it like the tendrils of some vast, pulsing brain. "This is it," she murmured, stepping forward. "If we disrupt this, we can stop their entire fleet." Just as she raised her weapon, a figure emerged from the shadows. A Kruvian, tall and imposing, its eyes gleaming with intelligence and menace. It moved with a strange, fluid grace, blocking her path with an almost imperceptible shake of its head. Lena froze, meeting its gaze. The silence stretched taut between them, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the enemy's sentience, the depth of its resolve. The Kruvian raised a hand, as if to communicate, but Lena knew better. She tightened her grip, her gaze hardening. "I'm sorry," she whispered and fired. The energy blast hit its mark, and the Kruvian crumpled, the core now exposed and vulnerable. With one last, steady breath, Lena aimed her weapon at the heart of the ship, ready to strike the final blow. But in that split second, the core surged, a blinding light filling the room as the Kruvian fleet outside prepared for their own final assault. The countdown had begun. Chapter 4, The Final Stand. The core chamber pulsed with blinding intensity, casting Lena and her team in an eerie glow. Alarms blared, reverberating through the walls of the Kruvian command ship as its systems struggled against the microorganism assault that continued to gnaw at its defenses. Lena steadied her breathing, the weight of the moment settling into her bones. The final confrontation loomed, each second bringing her closer to either victory or annihilation. Around her, her team stood ready, faces resolute despite the escalating danger. They knew, as she did, that this was their last chance. "Lena," Aiden's voice crackled through her earpiece, strained but steady. "You got to hit the core. Now! The fleet is preparing for a full-scale bombardment on Earth. They're not holding back this time." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Understood. We'll finish this." With a quick signal, she motioned her team forward. They closed in on the Kruvian core, a vast, throbbing orb of alien energy, pulsing with rhythmic flashes that seemed to echo a heartbeat. Strange symbols danced along its surface, and tendrils of energy flared, crackling with each pulse. Lena took aim, her grip tightening on her weapon. The core was within reach, a single shot away from being neutralized, but her instincts whispered a warning. A presence lingered, a sense that something was watching her, waiting. Then, out of the shadows, another Kruvian emerged, different from the one she'd faced before. Taller, more imposing, with an aura of command and ancient intelligence in its gaze. Its armored hand raised, and in the silence that followed, Lena recognized the Kruvian leader. It didn't speak. Instead, it extended one hand toward the core, as if offering her a choice. "Lena," Aiden's voice sounded again, urging her on. "You can't hesitate. Take the shot." But as she stared into the Kruvian's eyes, a question gnawed at her resolve. What if there was another way, a way to end this without obliterating the core, without dooming her team and Earth to an unknown consequence? Her mission had been clear, but the Kruvian leader's presence cast a shadow of doubt over her. "Stand down," she ordered, signaling her team to hold. Her voice was firm, even as her mind raced to find an answer. The Kruvian leader tilted its head, its gaze shifting between her and the core. Its intentions remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of understanding in its alien eyes. The two stood locked in a silent standoff, each assessing the other. Suddenly, the Kruvian reached out, pressing its hand to the core. The orb shifted, its light dimming, casting the chamber in a softer glow. Lena's team watched in stunned silence as the core's power appeared to recede, the ship's alarms quieting, the threat momentarily contained. "Well, what just happened?" Sato's voice whispered over the comm. Lena took a tentative step forward, her gaze still fixed on the Kruvian. It seemed to have made a choice, a sacrifice perhaps, allowing her a chance to speak without immediate violence. With a deep breath, she lowered her weapon. "Why are you doing this? You could wipe us out, destroy everything we have. But you hesitate." The Kruvian regarded her, and then, in a voice that resonated within her mind rather than her ears, it answered, "Survival. You have fought with honor. Perhaps there is a path, other than annihilation." The revelation hit her like a punch. All this time, they had assumed the Kruvians were relentless conquerors, bent on wiping humanity from existence. But what if their motivations were more complex? What if there was a possibility, however fragile, for coexistence? "Lena," Aiden interjected, his voice laced with confusion and urgency. "What are you talking about? We can't negotiate with them. You know what they've done to us." "I know, Aiden," she replied, her voice softer now. "But if there's a chance to end this without more death, isn't it worth considering?" The Kruvian leader took a step back, signaling to Lena with a slight nod. It was an invitation, a cautious, wary trust. She turned to her team, who looked at her with uncertainty, but also with a glimmer of hope. They were weary of endless battle, of seeing their world shattered day after day. For a moment, the possibility of peace was almost too much to believe. Lena addressed her team with a steady gaze. "Stand down. Let's hear them out." Her team held their weapons but lowered them, exchanging wary glances as they watched the Kruvian leader. In that brief truce, a quiet understanding formed, fragile and unspoken, yet undeniable. The Kruvian leader raised a hand, and within moments, a holographic map of their homeworld appeared before them. Lena recognized the implications immediately. It was a gesture, a sharing of vulnerability, revealing the Kruvian heartland as a show of trust. This wasn't just a battle to them. It was a desperate fight for their own survival. In a moment that would echo through history, Lena extended her hand toward the Kruvian leader, a symbol of unity against all odds. Their eyes met, and in that brief connection, something shifted. "We'll find another way," Lena said, her voice steady, a promise woven into every word. She glanced back at her team. "A way to preserve both our worlds." The Kruvian leader gave a solemn nod, its expression softening, acknowledging the choice. As their hands clasped, a silent understanding passed between them, a commitment to a fragile peace, a chance to end the cycle of destruction. In the quiet that followed, Lena felt the weight of her decision settle upon her shoulders. It was a path of unknowns, but it was a path nonetheless, a way forward, a way to save both species from the edge of extinction. As she and her team returned to their ship, the Kruvian fleet began to retreat, their weapons powered down, engines humming in a gesture of truce. A new dawn was rising, one built not on war, but on the hope of what humanity and the Kruvians might accomplish together. Back on Earth, cheers erupted from command centers and outposts as they realized the fighting was over, replaced by a tentative peace. Lena glanced at the skies, a sense of relief mixed with resolve in her chest. Her team looked to her, admiration and trust in their eyes. She had led them not to victory alone, but to something greater, a future shaped by unity rather than fear. As they descended toward Earth, Lena knew the battles were far from over. But she also knew that together, humanity and the Kruvians had a chance to create something new. For the first time in generations, there was hope, real, tangible hope that they could rise above the instincts that had defined them as predators and instead find a way to coexist. And for Lena, that was worth every risk she had taken.